Dr. Michael Greger coming to you live from my treadmill as I do every month to answer any questions you may have, though this may be the last for a few months as I am facing the deadline for my new book, How Not to Age, which should be out December 2022, unless I don't make my deadline, in which case it may be pushed back as much as a year. But for those of you unfamiliar with my work, every year I read through every issue of every English language nutrition journal in the world. So busy folks like you don't have to. Then I compile the most interesting, most groundbreaking, most practical findings and new videos and articles I upload nearly every day to my nonprofit site, NutritionFacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There are no ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything. Just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother, whose own life was saved with evidence-based nutrition. Let us go to the questions and see what you have for me today. All right. Fernanda says, what is the ideal LDL? Ideal LDL depends on whether or not you have been diagnosed with heart disease. If you have not, a lifetime LDL, well, actually a lifetime LDL under 100 should protect you from heart disease. However, if you didn't figure this out until middle age and your LDL's too high and you're trying to get it down to prevent heart disease, then 70 would be the target. If you already have heart disease, then the target draw in terms of secondary prevention to prevent a second heart attack drops down to like 30 to 50, or basically as low as possible. So wait a second, could there be a harm of having cholesterol too low? We didn't know until PCSK9 inhibitors came out. We have these new biologic injectable drugs which can drop people's cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, into the single digits, and still not seeing any problems with hormone manufacture like testosterone, estrogen, or any other issues that have piled on. So only benefit as you go lower and lower, but we don't, most people should not need drugs to get their LDL down. They just need to cut out or cut down on the three things that increase one's cholesterol, and that is saturated fat, found mostly in animal fats, and junk trans fats, found almost exclusively now in animal fat, now that's been removed from the food supply, from partially hydrogenated oils. And third is dietary cholesterol, found predominantly in eggs, but throughout the animal kingdom. Just do all that, your cholesterol should drop right down. Add in a whole bunch of high fiber plant foods, which is, say, whole plant foods, and you can push your cholesterol down even further. I have an LP little a video up. I'm trying to think if I have another one coming up. I was just looking at that for the book. But I go through exactly where we should have a target LP little a and what we can do about it. Yes, in addition to eating healthy, there are a few foods, particularly, that may lower LP little a further. And I think those are black cumin seed and flax seeds. But check the video to find out. Okay, I will randomly click another question, and it says, this is from Leslie Geraldine. What do you think about eating insects like chimpanzees do? In Mexico, people eat crickets with lime and chili. Ooh, lime and chili sounds good. I actually do have 2 videos on entomophagy, which is the consumption of insects. I talk about which insects are the healthiest insects to eat, etc., etc. Check it out, but only if you have an iron stomach, because there's some really gross, at least to my sensibilities, pictures and images in those 2 videos. Okay, this is from Heidi. New to plant-based, mostly fruit diet. Okay. Planning to take vitamin B12 supplement? Absolutely. Or eat vitamin B12 fortified foods. One of those 2. Critically important for anyone eating a plant-centered diet, even if it's not strictly plant-based. Critically important to do. Okay, next up, Jacqueline says, what is the, oh, that's a good question. What is the difference between vegan and whole food plant-based diet? So a vegan diet is defined as not eating animal products, and oftentimes also has other stipulations like not wearing animal products. But from a strictly dietary point of view, no animal products. But that means you could live off of French fries and beer and cotton candy, and have a strictly vegan diet and have a horrible diet, right? Whereas whole food plant-based diet is, it doesn't just say what you don't eat, but actually says what you do eat. Oh, you actually eat vegetables. That's nice. So whole food plant-based diet, one is trying to minimize the intake of meat, eggs, dairy, and junk and maximize the intake of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, your beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, mushrooms, basically real food that grows out of the ground. These are our healthiest choices. Next up, we have Mike. What a good name. What do I think of Dr. Cate Shanahan, Fatburn Fix, specifically grass-fed beef, pasture? That's when you raise them germ-free. Pasture-raised meat and dairy. I have never heard of Dr. Shanahan or the Fatburn Fix. What do I think of grass-fed beef? Or pasture-raised meat and dairy? Still has saturated fat, trans fats, cholesterol, all the things I just talked about that actually increase your LDL cholesterol. Number one cause of, the leading risk factor for the number one cause of death in men and women. Now, is that better than eating bacon? It is better than processed meat. Yes, indeed. Unprocessed red meat is healthier than processed red meat. So better than bacon, ham, bologna, sausage. But certainly not as good as eating some hummus. Okay, next up. There we go. Oz asks, how do I motivate myself to reduce my meat intake? Went to very small amounts to back to previous amounts. Oh, okay. Well, one can, depending on your personality, things may work differently. One can continue to educate yourself. One can control one's environment. And so if you just don't have meat in the house, it's easier to, it's just like not having junk in the house. I mean, it's easier not to eat cookies when there aren't cookies in the cupboard, kind of thing. And educating yourself about the various, whether you care about your health, you educate about health. If you care about the environment, you can educate yourself about the environmental impacts. Care about pandemic risk. If you care about animal issues, you can kind of constantly barrage yourself with information, so you can live a life that is aligned with your values of wanting to have a healthy family and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully that helps. And figure out, like, what are you getting out of that, out of the meat? Do you like the taste? Is it the texture? Is it, are there other things you could explore that are healthier with the same taste, texture, whatever? Is it just like one recipe you really love it in? Well, maybe we can swap that out. There's all sorts of wonderful resources online for people to do that. Worst comes to worst, there are plant-based meats on the market now. Certainly better than animal-based meats. Not as good as eating beans or something, but certainly zero cholesterol, usually less saturated fat, no trans fats. And actually has a little fiber, so certainly healthier and can give you the same kind of taste and textures that you grew up with on your transition towards eating a diet centered around whole plant foods, which would really be ideal. Next question, Maria says, I have constant postnasal drip. I had it for years. Been whole food plant-based since May, still have it. What am I doing wrong? Sorry, I can't read the rest. It cuts off. You got to keep your question short, I guess. So postnasal drip can be an allergic have an allergic component. Could be dust, could be dander, could be pollen, that kind of thing. And so you can, for example, try an air filter, like a HEPA filter at night, in the room that you sleep, and that can kind of take some allergens out of the air, and that may help. Give that a try. Okay, next up, Jason says, "What do I think about Dave Asprey?" Says a lot of stuff about MCT oil. Recommends eating fats. I've never heard of Dave Asprey, but I do have videos about MCTs using my coconut oil videos. And like eating fats isn't like just drinking oil or spoonfuls of lard or something. I mean, I encourage people to eat fats in whole plant foods like avocados and nuts and seeds and things. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend eating isolated fats if indeed that's what Dave is saying. John Moore says, "Can I comment on the significance of trypsin inhibitors contained within some plant-based foods? Should we, as whole food plant-based aficionados, be concerned? No, we should not be concerned." And these are the so-called anti-nutrients. I know I covered it in a video. I don't know if the video is that yet. I think it is. It was on plant-based milks. Maybe it's coming up if it's not already there, where I talk about where it was this interesting, this nice review the table had this long list of all the advantages of plant-based milks over animal-based milk. And then in the con column was this anti-nutrients. So it's like all these lists of good things plus anti-nutrients. Well, wait a second, what are anti-nutrients? And so then I go into the long to do all the research. And basically, spoiler alert, may not even be such a thing. Like, so we used to think, for example, phytates were mineral absorption inhibitors, but this is based on like puppies and rats half a century ago. It actually has beneficial effects in people. So I go through each one of them and talk about them. So it's definitely not something to worry about. If the video is not already up, it will be coming up. And if you have any follow-up questions, let me know. Okay, next up, Pelican. Not Pelican 1 through 6, but Pelican 7 says, "This is a typical question that I'm having a lot of trouble finding proper clarity for. Okay, does soaking nuts and seeds and legumes in water with a little salt?" Oh, I just talked about this. Excuse me. Okay, so phytic acid, those are the phytates I was just talking about. So we don't want to soak our nuts and seeds because we want those phytates, which may have anti-cancer properties. And I do have videos up on that. You have to not just soak legumes. Well, you don't have to soak legumes, but you do have to cook legumes. But you wouldn't want to add salt. It has nothing to do with phytic acid. Yeah, and you don't want to add salt, period. We get way too much salt. And indeed, hypertension is the leading cause of death on planet Earth. So don't worry about soaking nuts and seeds. Don't add salt to anything if you can help it. And you don't need to soak your legumes, but you do need to cook them. Oh, unless you want to sprout them. Like you can sprout lentils. Some legumes you can sprout. Sprouted lentils are a wonderful, healthy snack and super easy. Any advice on asthma? Yes, I got videos on both preventing and treating asthma. Typically, they have to do with increasing fruit and vegetable consumption. There's actually studies where they took people, reduce their fruit and vegetable consumption, and increase their fruit and vegetable consumption, randomized to each group. And those increased fruit and vegetable consumption, if I remember correctly, significantly lower asthma exacerbation rates. But what's interesting about this study is the group randomized to low fruit and vegetable consumption was like the average fruit and vegetable consumption of the American public. So it was like putting people in the low fruit and vegetable group that did so poorly in the study. That was just like the average fruit and vegetable group. So definitely we want to increase our fruits and vegetables. And whether that's because of an anti-inflammatory effect or an antioxidant effect, who knows? Who cares? Eat more fruits and vegetables to decrease one's risk. Also, high fiber foods, the butyrate, the short chain fatty acid produced from all prebiotics like fiber resistant starch. When we eat things like whole grains and legumes, converted by our good gut flora into these short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which are absorbed through our system, circulate through our body, have anti-inflammatory effects, including within the airways, which should help with asthma. Okay, Krishna says 2 baby aspirin okay to take. Had a stroke in January, no blockages. I have a video on whether low-dose aspirin is a good thing for both cardiovascular disease prevention and for cancer prevention. Check it out. Although there's new recommendations that have just come out, which I have not reviewed yet, so maybe out of date. But I will certainly update those videos as soon as I finish the book. Fingers crossed. Okay, Matt says, what do I think about supplementing with EPA only, not DHA, for cardiovascular risk reducing effects seen in the Reduce It trial? Well, I could go through the whole long story, but basically, but the bottom line is that, randomized controlled trials, the randomized people to fish oil have found no benefit, little or no benefit for cardiovascular disease until and all of a sudden this new Reduce It trial came out, which tried just the EPA instead of the EPA and DHA. It was a typical mix in fish oil and found a significant reduction. Now, if you throw it in with all the other failed trials, it washes out and there's actually no benefit. But they're saying, well, no, but this is kind of a special formulation, or at least the pharmaceutical company that produces the stuff says this is a special formulation. It turns out it may have been the placebo control that they chose. They, of course, funded the study. They chose mineral oil as the placebo control, as opposed to another trial that recently came out, used corn oil as a control, which is a better control because it's neutral, whereas mineral oil actually increased CRP, C-reactive protein, increased inflammation, increased LDL cholesterol. And so this is a classic big pharma drug industry trick where they choose as the comparator something they know is to be inferior, so their new fancy drug looks better. And so they choose mineral oil to make so we don't exactly know how much just the pure EPA is actually helping people. There are more studies on the way, but no, I would not take EPA or DHA for cardiovascular disease prevention. However, EPA may indeed help with cognitive function later in life, which is why I recommend people consider it. Okay, what is the best way to get sufficient zinc? I run into a chronic deficiency and had to supplement. I'm curious how you got diagnosed with chronic deficiency. It's really hard to actually measure zinc status. But if that were the case, then you don't need to supplement with zinc. You need zinc-rich foods. Zinc, there's a lot of zinc. The reason why men, for example, have lower zinc levels than women is for the opposite reason that women tend to have lower iron levels because they lose iron every month, and men lose zinc in every seminal emission. Right? Zinc is found in semen to protect the sperm, and found in all seeds, not just semen. It has this and so it can found in not just nuts and seeds, which are seeds, but also beans, which are botanically seeds as well. Whole grains. What are whole grains? They're seeds. Anything you put in the ground turns into a plant. That's a seed botanically. So these are the foods packed with lots of zinc because zinc has this quality that helps with kind of reproduction and growth. So that's where you should get your zinc from. Shouldn't need to supplement. All right, my bet Paz says Cate. Jesus. Bebida vegetal de semillas de hemp. Soy alérgica a los frutos secos. Okay, so I'm gonna translate. See, I can't. I was gonna copy paste into like Google Translate, but unfortunately, I can't copy paste off the screen. So it looks like I drink maybe hemp milk because I'm allergic to fruit sugar. Sorry. I apologize for my only knowing one language. I actually took a couple years of Spanish in junior high school, but learned un poquito solamente. Okay, Peter Rabbit. No, not just any Peter Rabbit, but Peter Rabbit, the nurse, pianist, and composer. Although maybe RDN is not actually a nurse. Anyway, RD is. Are plastics in chewing gum concern for humans' health? I didn't know there was plastic in chewing gum. I don't think there's plastic in chewing gum. If there was, be a concern. You don't want to eat plastic, but I guess is this a question? Is the gum base in chewing gum bad? I actually do have videos on chewing gum, either up or not, but basically it was on chewing gum benefits for weight loss. And if I remember correctly, there weren't any. But yeah, I would not worry about the gum base. And I'm not sure what you're talking about plastics. Okay, next up. Miyazaki Fan 100 says healthy sodium intake for endurance athletes. What about treating hypotension with salt intake? You do not have to go out of your way to add salt to your diet, or you shouldn't have to. And we should not treat anything but symptomatic hypotension. So people, if you're like, oh my God, my blood pressure is low, well, that's actually good. We want basically lower the better without becoming symptomatic. Which is kind of like iron stores. We want to have our iron as low as possible, but without causing symptoms or dropping hemoglobin. Okay, Tom Dunnick says dangers of glyphosates in organic legumes, of which have been reported. Well, so organic legumes by definition, by the 2002 USDA Organic Standard, shouldn't have any glyphosates in them. But if there's some kind of cross-contamination, we don't even know if there's adverse effects of glyphosates in, conventional soybeans or something, for example, which is where you find presumably the highest levels. That's the Roundup pesticide. And we just simply don't have any human data. But I've got videos. I go through all the data and talk about the, laboratory animal stuff. But if you're interested in glyphosate, check out, it's like a 3-video series. Just type GMO into NutritionFacts.org and it should pop right up. Okay, what do we got next? We got Karen, spelled interestingly. Does cyanocobalamin reduce potassium levels in the blood? Not that I know of, and cannot imagine a mechanism by which that would happen. That is my preferred form of vitamin B12 for supplementation. Doc, be gone. Hope you're not talking about me. What do you think about a teaspoon of organic flaxseed oil on organic popcorn so the herbs and spices stick to it? I also spray apple cider vinegar on it. Doesn't that do it? Works for me. I think I use malt vinegar. Same thing. What do I think about teaspoon of flaxseed oil? Unnecessary. If you want your stuff to stick to it, you can use just kind of water-based stuff. You can spritz anything you want on it. I don't know. Yeah, unnecessary is what I would say to that. Lewis says, does a high content of omega-6 in walnuts, there's really not a high content of omega-6 in walnuts, interfere with the absorption of the omega-3? There's also present in walnuts. I'm under the impression they share the same pathway of absorption. Not exactly, not absorption, but same pathway in terms of elongation with an enzyme called delta-6 desaturase. The ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 walnuts is actually excellent. Certainly the highest 3-to-6 ratio of any nuts. Although something like flaxseed would be even better. So I mean, the only thing about omega-6, we're not exactly sure how impactful this is, but we should probably stay away from omega-6 rich oils, which are like the junky stuff you find in junk food, which is cottonseed oil, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil. And so if just stay away from country sources of that, you probably don't have to worry about your omega-6 ratio in whole healthy foods. K24 Swiffer says 80 grams of my protein a day comes from soy. Is that going to be a problem? Yeah, well, the 80 grams of protein may be a problem unless you are absolutely humongous. We really only need 0.8 grams per healthy kilogram of body weight. Although, look, you weigh 100 kilograms, right? What is that? 240 pounds, something like that. 220 pounds. But this is, and that should be ideal body weight, not measured body weight. And I mean, presumably the only way you're doing that is by taking soy protein supplements, which I would not recommend. I wouldn't recommend any protein supplements. In fact, I think what's going to come out of my How Not to Age book on longevity is a protein restriction may actually be one of the secrets. Although I'm still working on it. Don't take my word for it until all the research is done. Okay. Do I maybe Fly Shacker is responding to somebody else asking, they brush your teeth? I certainly brush my teeth. Man of constant sorrow. That sounds depressing. How do I treat IBS? Oh, I think vomiting when eating under stress, I wouldn't consider that an irritable bowel syndrome issue. But well, I would not eat under stress. Yeah, and I would, make sure you don't have like some kind of esophageal stricture or something. That is not a normal symptom people should have. Someone's replying to somebody else. That's awesome. Kavi says, hello. Oh, thank you. Any opinion on the salt fix by this James person? Never heard of it. But unless the salt fix is don't add any salt to your food, then I am skeptical. Next up, Chevweeze says in the video, you said 2 nori sheets a day provide sufficient iodine. Is that 2 palm-sized snacking sheets? No, those are actually full-size nori sheets, like to roll sushi. Indeed, not the little snacking sheets. Okay, next up. Maria says, how come my husband got COVID and I didn't? He eats a carnivore diet and I eat a plant-based diet, but sometimes I eat seafood. There's only one study that on plant-based diets and COVID, which did not find any difference in prevalence rates, but just a difference in severity. So people who eat plant-based may have less severe courses of COVID, but did not have but it was not measuring the chance of getting COVID in the first place. The reason that your husband got COVID and you didn't is because either he got exposed to a larger dose, or he didn't have the whatever immune capacity that you had. Hopefully, that was a breakthrough infection and hopefully you are both vaccinated to reduce, particularly to reduce your risk of getting infected in the first place, but most importantly, reduce your risk of a severe course. I'm a Moderna recipient, and very soon may be able to get a booster shot. Any opinion? Oh, I gotta go. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. I got an interview starting in 60 seconds. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a safe, happy, healthy holiday season.